Welcome to another episode of Fougere Family Adventures. Today, I'm fishing Canham Lake here in British Columbia. So join me today as we fish for lake trout, and I'll be jigging with buzz bombs. This buzz bomb here, we have been using these buzz bombs, blue and holographic green, over the last couple days, and we've been catching quite a few lake trout. I'm using a 9-foot Fenwick salmon rod. I have a 14-foot Lund, so the 9-foot is just a touch too big. It does curl at the front of the boat. If I could find a 7-foot or an 8-foot rod, I would probably go to something like that. Something that's a little bit heavy. Depending on the time of the year, I'll target lake trout anywhere from 40 to 80 feet. Some people will target them a little bit deeper, but I like 40 to 80. And it just depends on the time of the year and where these fish are at. I'm also finding it depends on the weather. So today I'm using a Daiwa Alexa 400 line counter reel. And this line counter reel is great because it allows me to judge how deep I'm at. And I match it to my fish finder and it's extremely close. Right now, I'm in 66 feet of water and I'm marking a fish. That fish is suspended, so I'm just gonna jig my buzz bomb and I'm gonna let it pause. I can actually watch my fish finder and see what this fish wants. I'll drop it down to the bottom because it looks like he's went right down. And now that I'm on the bottom, all I'm doing is jigging up and letting it sit. So there's a couple different ways that we've been jigging this trip. We jig up and we let it hit the bottom. You can see my line goes slack. There's nothing there. Leave it on the bottom for a minute. Or you can jig and let it bounce off the bottom, like that. Now, because the bottom's always changing, a line counter reel that has a thumb release is great because I can stay on the bottom all the time. And if that's not working, you can actually reel up a couple turns, 5 or 6 turns, sometimes slower. The fish sometimes will hit the buzz bomb when you're reeling up, and jig suspended. If you're not getting a hit, drop it down, back down to the bottom. And sometimes those fish will hit it when it's coming down or shortly after it hits the bottom. Now what we're trying to mimic here is a wounded fish. We're trying to mimic a wounded bait fish, and you want to jig accordingly. Try and think about a wounded bait fish and what it would be doing. In its last effect to get away from this lake trout, they might sprint away and stop, and then they might float to the bottom and might try again. So try something like that. Now we are getting pushed around a little bit, and that's okay. As long as your line is straight out from your boat and you've got your line tight, you can usually feel a hit. When I let it back down, I try and keep my line nice and tight so that I can feel a bite when it's going back down. But I am drifting a little bit too much. As soon as I get about 45 degrees out, I personally like to reset. So I will just reel in 66 feet of line. And then I'll reset. When I reset, I'm going to cast towards where I'm drifting to. So I've cast it out, and by the time my boat gets there, my line should be close to straight up and down, and I can jig for that fish that's on the bottom right now. So just like steelhead fishing, when you're fishing for lake trout, I personally like moving around. Now if you've marked a couple fish in an area, and if you can drift towards them, that's the ideal way to do this, because you're going to save yourself a ton of fuel in your boat. I brought 4 jerry cans of fuel this trip, and I've only used 1 so far, and my week is almost over. Now, when you're fishing a big lake like this, especially in a small boat, or any boat for that matter, it's always a good idea to have some form of communication. Now, there's a lot of lakes in British Columbia where we have cell phone service and we can use our cell phone. Here on Canham Lake, I'm fishing the northern end of the lake. There's not cell service. I cannot get through to anybody. So you want to have some form of communication. Now what we're trying is we're using radios. And I've got Sarah and the kids are back at the base camp and they have the extra radio. So if something was to happen to me, I can get a hold of somebody and call for help. You always want to make sure you have a boater's plan, make sure you have a backup plan when you're coming out here in these big lakes. I'm just going to bounce the bottom like we talked about. I have a fish down there. I'm going to see what this fish wants. He might not want my buzz bomb at all. We found some days they wanted a blue buzz bomb. I'm using blue holographic. And other days they wanted a green holographic buzz bomb. So it really depends on the day. We are fishing probably the worst time of the day, midday. I slept in today. Been a little bit too much fishing the last couple days. And so if we can't find anything now, I'll go in for lunch. I'll come back out just before the evening and see if we can get some lake trout to bite. I've gone and switched to my other 9-foot rod. I believe this one's actually an 8'6" Berkeley. Another salmon rod that I used to use all the time. This rod here can handle up to 50-pound test line, so I'm not terribly worried about breaking this rod. And I've just paired it up with an Abu Garcia 6500. And again, I have a button on the side. It's not as easy as the thumb release. It has no line counter. But because I'm not targeting suspended fish, I don't need a line counter reel. Any reel will work for this type of fishing. And anyone can do this. All you want to do is bounce off the bottom. I have also changed to this rod because I have a buzz bomb, a blue buzz bomb on here with a different profile. The profile on this buzz bomb is skinnier than the 3-inch heavy buzz bombs that I like to use. But that's okay. I'm thinking they might want a smaller presentation. It's still heavy like the 3-inch buzz bomb. It's just longer. Now when I am looking for locations to jig for lake trout, I do a couple things. The first thing I do is I do pre-scouting at home. I will print a map from Angler's Atlas. They have great maps. Then I will open up my Navionics app that I have on my phone, and I will find different areas of the lake that I want to try and locate fish on. When I print the map from Angler's Atlas, I can mark it up. Navionics has better contours on it, so I can actually zoom right in and see where I want to try. I'm looking for areas that come up and flatten out. Now, if I don't have that, and when I am at the lake, I'm actually zigzagging. So I will actually do 45 degrees, just like this, and I will go at 45 degrees towards the shoreline. And it will give me an idea of what is down there. As I'm going 45 degrees towards the shoreline, I can see that this spot is coming up like this. So this isn't really a spot I want to fish. There is a flat spot there, but I'm getting quite close, so I'm going to turn around. So I'll do another 45-degree turn. Now this is my search pattern. 45 degrees out, 45 degrees in. And I'm hoping that I get some overlapping of my cone from my sonar. Remember, your cones from your fish finder come down like this. So if I can try and overlap my search pattern, I can search a wide area with this method and hopefully find a fish, but more importantly, find an area where these fish might be hanging out later. I can see this spot is sloping down again. Now if I was to turn my boat, and if I was to go parallel with the shoreline, so right now I'm going parallel with the shoreline, I'm not going to get as accurate a reading of what the bottom's doing. Right now my fish finder is leveling out because my cone is going to go out like this. Now this side's going to be deeper because I know the lake goes like this here. This side's going to be shallower. So what is my fish finder picking up? Am I picking up that top area and it's telling me that it is 84 feet deep? Or am I picking up 84 feet deep on this side of my fish finder? So to combat that, correct me if I'm wrong, 45 degrees will give me a better idea. 45 degrees towards the shore gives me a better idea of what's going on below the boat. Now I'm doing this with a Garmin Striker 4. I'm using the regular settings that I use when I'm ice fishing, so I don't have to change a thing. And I'm just back and forth, back and forth. Now some people might think this is pointless or you're not gaining anything from this, but trust me, when you can figure out what's going on down there, you can find the fish easier and you can get into some more fish while you're jigging. So I will just keep going back along here. There's a spot over there that looks good from the shoreline. I'm hoping it drops right down and flattens out, but I don't know. So we're gonna just follow this shoreline. I'm getting pushed into the shoreline here, so that's not gonna be fun to fish. I'm gonna be jigging, I'm gonna be resetting. So I wanna find some water that'll work. If I can find an open flat, a little bit more open area, it's gonna be easier for me. I don't have to worry too much about the shoreline or hitting bottom. And I'm gonna find a spot that I can drift along. It's kind of what I like to do. If I can find a spot where I can just let the boat drift, then I can cover a lot of ground, I can hit a lot of new fish, and potentially pick up some fish that are fresh, that are willing to bite. So because this is an exploratory trip for me right now, it's midday, the fish are probably not biting, I'm gonna be moving along quite quickly. I'm not necessarily trying to mark fish right now. All I'm trying to do is learn a new lake, and I'm trying to learn that as quickly as I can, because I only have a certain amount of time that I can catch fish. So you can see my boat pattern behind us. This will help you learn a new lake. It's taken me 5 minutes to go a couple hundred yards, and I am deciding whether or not I'm going to come back to this spot.